There will be a lot of us feeling quite bereft after this weekend, after a fortnight of wall-to-wall live sport, some of the most powerful sporting stories you ever get, and a newfound knowledge of 3x3 basketball. Indeed, it has been quite the Olympic fortnight. This is Matt in for Neil on The Daily. And on this episode, what happens after an Olympics? Well, of course, the Paralympics comes next. But if you're one of the athletes competing, after your focus has been 24/7 on that one moment, how do you then physically and mentally reset? If you've been the host, as Paris has, what is the legacy? Is it too early to tell? Or can we get a sense of what Paris has done for the Olympic movement? Of course, we will preview the first thing which happens after Olympics, which is the Paralympic Games too. We have a 2024 Olympic medalist on the podcast today and one of the country's greatest ever Paralympians with 11 gold medals to her name, Jess Roberts and Dame Tanni Grey-Thompson. Jess, huge congratulations to you on your medal. And I'm sure it's true of a lot of Olympic journeys, but yours also was not massively straightforward in how you got to Paris in the first place.
Thank you so much. It's been, quite a whirlwind experience. So originally I wasn't selected to go. So I kind of had to deal with that disappointment. And then obviously Katie broke her ankle.
That's Katie Archibald, who's a big presence in British women's cycling, and she got that injury right on the eve of I think it was the day the team was announced. Is that right?
Yeah, the same day. It was crazy. So that was like, oh my God, one of our strongest riders has just broke her ankle and she can't go to the Olympics anymore. And then I think it must have been a week later, I got like the email that you've now been selected. And I was like, oh my God. So it was like, yes, a big roller coaster of emotions. So I was just so grateful for this opportunity. It's been amazing.
Tanni, let me bring you in because, the British track cycling team has been strong for a long time. So for someone like Jess coming into that, perhaps increases the pressure a bit more. And you are an old hand at Paralympics. You won medals at 5 games at Seoul, at Barcelona, Atlanta, Sydney, and Athens as well. Let's just delve into a little bit that winning mentality. I mean, there must have been athletes following you into the games, looking at you going, well, wow, Tanni is so experienced at this, won so much. Does that somehow put more pressure on some of the younger, less experienced GB athletes coming through?
I mean, the pressure is absolutely immense. And I think especially when you come from a sport that has been very successful, even before lottery funding. And for the athletes, it's day to day, it's a grind, you get the job done, but the expectation to win is quite huge, actually. And the binary nature of the medal table is that golds are the ones that counted and silver and bronzes, come after that. But the pressure is something that the athletes are dealing with all the time because of, it's just saying, thinking she wasn't selected, then she was selected and getting her head back. And to win a bronze is like a massive achievement when you've been through so many different things to get there.
Just what has been quite telling is hearing, look, I know you're chuffed to bits with your bronze, and you absolutely should be, and it was a brilliant team performance, but there are some of those athletes on Team GB who haven't been able to hide the disappointment of not quite finishing where they expected to. I mean, Josh Kerr in the 1,500 metres springs to mind. We were all rooting for him to get a gold. He had this arch rivalry with Ingebrigtsen, and it turns out that neither of them won the gold. It was won by an American sneaking through at the end. I'm interested to learn a little bit more about the mentality in terms of, okay, we're happy with that, we go again, or that wasn't satisfactory, we dust ourselves off and we focus on the US in 4 years' time. Do you put it to the back of your mind and just look ahead, or do you bask in the glory for a bit longer?
It's a tricky one, I guess. Like, we all worked so hard towards this, and to get that medal was really special for us. So we haven't even debriefed like our last ride, but I'm sure when we get back, we'll go through everything and look ahead to what's next. But as an athlete, like, you always want that gold medal. So, I mean, I have thought, LA, I'd love to, go back and try and get that gold medal, but you have to enjoy what you've done and definitely celebrate what you've done.
Tanni, I could catch you nodding at that one then. Tell us your take on it.
You've got to love your sport at this level because you might not always like it. And what the public don't see is the relentlessness of training. They just might see, the final minute and a half of what's not just a 4-year cycle, but could be 12 years, could be more. And I think on a personal level, if you come away thinking there is nothing more you could have done, whether you win a gold or you make a semi-final, then, that's also something, the public love sporting moments. They love seeing British athletes trying incredibly hard and being the best they can. And those are the things people remember. They do remember the gold medals, but they also remember these amazing stories of people doing extraordinary things. So the games and the legacy of the games, I think, is quite interesting. I know for me as an athlete, you're constantly asked when you're competing about, who inspired you. That there are lots of people, both in and outside sport, that make that difference. And there'll be youngsters watching now who will think, okay, do you know what? I'm going to take up track cycling. And that's amazing.
Jess, was it the Olympics that inspired you to take up track cycling? Because, as I say, Team GB's had success on the track for the best part of 25, 24 years.
Yeah, definitely. This has been my dream since I started riding competitively. London 2012, I was on holiday with my family and we used to go away in the camper and we had it on in the telly there and I was like, wow, this is really cool. And like Tanni said, there's so many moments I've had that I'll remember forever. It's not just the medal, it's everything around it. It's the journey to get here. And I just try so hard to just enjoy every moment and take it all in. And yeah, it's been incredible and definitely I want to come back for LA and do this all again.
What about drawing inspiration from the rest of the team, Tanni? Because Jess is obviously in a team all the time with the team pursuit. You were racing a lot on your own pretty much. So what was your experience of the wider Team GB? Were you celebrating other successes, other disciplines? What was it like in your experience?
Well, I think the longer you're in the squad or the team, the more people you get to know from different sports as well. So coming from athletics, which was expected to deliver a big chunk of the medals, and then swimming was in the same position, there was always kind of quite a lot of friendly rivalry between athletics and women about who had managed to get more medals on the table. But actually, it's also sometimes quite difficult. So I competed over multi-events, competed most days. You don't really have time to watch what other people are doing. It's the other things that I think, as well as how you perform, that make athletes go back and do the next 4-year cycle to get to LA. And if people ask me, my favourite moments from competing, yes, some of them are winning races, but there's other things. There's moments that happen, some of the camaraderie, where someone picks you up and helps you and supports you. Those are the really meaningful moments for you as a sports person.
Jess, I need to ask you about the experience of wider Team GB for you in Paris. Have you had time to absorb some of the other successes? Keely Hodgkinson, of course, in the 800 has been massive. We saw a win on the water yesterday for, I'm going to say kite sailing. I probably got the name of the discipline wrong, but either way, it was brilliant to see. Have you been able to pick up on some of that and also share in the success with some of your fellow Team GB teammates?
Yeah, definitely. So we've down in the dining room area, we've got 3 tellies on that have all different events all day long. If we've got time in the evenings or during the day, we'll all sit round on the sofas and watch. Yeah, it just brings everyone together watching different events and celebrating all the success that we had. And actually one that really stands out, so the women's team sprint.
Oh, yes. Got gold.
It was, yeah, incredible.
For the first time ever, I think.
Yes, for our first gold in women's team sprint, we were sat having dinner and we had it on the telly and there wasn't a dry eye on that table.
London inspired, you said, and London was all specially built in East London. And since then, we've seen Rio do similar and Tokyo as well. Paris has gone a completely different way. They've obviously used the existing infrastructure that's there, the Stade de France, places like the Place de la Concorde. How has that felt for you, Jess, in particular?
Yesterday, we went and did a Champions Walk. I don't know if you've seen any pictures or anything about it, but you basically walk. They've got big stands with millions of people in, and you walk down this little stage, and then it's got the Eiffel Tower in the background, and it was just incredible. Everyone just cheering for you. There was so many GB flags there, and it's they really made an experience you can have outside of your own competition. So that was really cool.
I think the Olympic cities have to think very differently about what they do. So London learned from previous cities, talk about some of the white elephants. Barcelona is now seen as being hugely successful, but had years where they didn't really know how to use the venues. The number of countries and cities that can afford to host the games is going to be a challenge if, There was an expectation previously that it had to be a new venue for the opening ceremony. So Paris threw that all out the window by having an opening ceremony that went through the city. I mean, I think it was quite interesting. It got better as it went along, I think is fair to say. It was quite bold to do something. It's going to be interesting what LA does and how it uses, maybe the history of the 84 games to play out in terms of what they organise.
Thanks to Jess and to Tanni. In a minute, we'll head off to Paris and join our sports correspondent, Rob Harris. So Rob Harris joins us now, and Rob's been there all fortnight. How have you experienced Paris? Has it been a success in your eyes?
Yes, there's almost two sides to the Olympics, the successful staging and then the cascade of controversies around things like the water quality of the River Seine, the opening ceremony, and the intense scrutiny over gender eligibility inflamed around boxing. But alongside that, in parallel, there has been a reawakening of the Olympics as an event viewed around the world in particular. It looks great. In Paris, it can seem perhaps quieter at times. You don't really know there's an Olympics going on. But when you are close to the venues, particularly right in the centre and some of those great Parisian landmarks being used, you do get a real sense of the buzz.
A lot of comparisons with London there then, because in 2012, a lot of focus on the events themselves, but the city was a bit quieter. A lot of people, a lot of Londoners decided to leave, and it seems like Parisians have done the same thing.
You do get that feel even when you're sort of eating out. The places can be quiet even on a Friday and Saturday night, but then, such is the nature of our work, we might end up eating at 11 p.m. at night, midnight after broadcasting. You then see people coming from the stadium starting to sort of fill up places around the Champs-Elysees. I mean, one difference is compared to particularly London and the Rio Games is there's not a big Olympic park. So the one in Stratford in 2012, the one in the Barra area in Rio in 2016, which was almost an hour away from, say, the Copacabana. Here you've got the Stade de France being used for athletics in particular at the moment, but there isn't a big Olympic park. The stadiums, the venues that are being used right the way through the centre of Paris, existing venues, also means they haven't had to build huge infrastructure just for these games. So it means not everyone is converging on one particular location, but you're quite spread out. So you see fans being in the heart of the city rather than, say, in London in 2012. It's just a few places like Horse Guards Parade being used largely right in the heart of London itself.
Is this a new template then for future Olympic Games? And as you say, it's amazing how they've used the Stade de France and laid down that noticeable purple track there. It looks like it was always made for athletics when, of course, it's been used for plenty of other sports and not track and field since then. So is there a new template now to do it with slightly less cost, slightly smarter?
I think that's very much the intention of the International Olympic Committee. They introduced Agenda 2020, all about reducing costs. We saw with Beijing, as you say, in particular in 2008, these big, vast infrastructure projects Rio had to, and it was all sorts of headaches with the Rio planning because it was about delays. Would it be ready? Various issues on the ground. But this Paris plan did not require lots of new infrastructure, just one venue being built particularly for the games and moving to LA as well, using a lot of the existing infrastructure that they do have already around the sport.
Yeah, it's interesting, Rob, isn't it? You think about where the Olympics has been in terms of the Summer Games in recent years, and they are big global cities with money to spend. Even Rio, which is probably in, I guess, the poorest country out of the ones that have recently hosted it, with China, the UK, France, and Japan. They've still got money to spend. And what it means is then maybe the Paris template is something that's a bit more amenable to those places in the global south where you would imagine that the IOC would like to take the Olympic message.
I think the IOC wants to try to show that it doesn't have to build lots of new things to stage an Olympics. And that very much is the case in LA in 2028. It is largely existing venues, a few temporary ones. Obviously, they're helped by the NFL infrastructure in particular, with venues being used for that. But also, Paris has showed how to sort of use some of the great landmarks and locations. The Grand Palais hosting various events there, like Taekwondo. They look absolutely spectacular, and it's how you sort of show off a city at the same time as just holding Olympics in it.
Rob, let's finish off as we head into the final weekend of the Olympics and also thinking ahead to the Paralympics and reflect on Team GB's success. At the time of recording, they've amassed more than 50 medals, which makes them successful. They could end up 4th or 5th, it looks like, on the medal count. I'm careful to call it because that's what Tanni said it should be called. But it's interesting to see where the new talent is emerging in the new disciplines. Just at the time of recording, Team GB's Toby Roberts has literally just won in the past few minutes a gold medal in bouldering, which is climbing for those who aren't familiar with that. And also yesterday, Dorset's Ellie Aldridge secured the first ever kite surfing Olympic title as well. It certainly seems that Team GB is good at the new stuff.
Yeah, it's certainly paying off in terms of the investment in those sports. BMX is still relatively new this century as well, and that's been delivering medals. And it's about where the funding is targeted, and it is very targeted to try to deliver success. And the fact, we've seen it with the brand new Olympic sports of kite surfing, new disciplines that have come into the Olympics too. They can add new sports for each edition. The minimum target was 50 by Team GB in conjunction with UK Sport, which provides the tens and tens of millions, hundreds of millions of pounds into sport through lottery funding. Interestingly, I heard that Sir John Major actually sent a message of good luck that's been posted in the Athlete Village. Of course, he's in part responsible for this Olympic success by introducing the National Lottery, and lottery funding then being flowing into Olympic sports over 2.5 decades since it started to be introduced, from the lows of Atlanta in '96 when there was just the solitary gold medal. Now, if Team GB goes a day or so, as happened this week, without a gold, there's lots of questions being asked, when are the golds going to come? But you see so many fine margins down to this. Matthew Hudson-Smith in the 400 metres came within hundredths of a second of becoming the first Team GB gold medalist in the 400 metres in 100 years. So it just shows the fine margins between success and just missing out on the ultimate gold medals. But certainly Team GB will see this as a successful Games, having hit that minimum target of 50 medals.
So with the Olympics ending over the weekend, it all wraps up again for the Paralympics, which begins at the end of August. Since I was joined by Tanni Grey-Thompson, I had to ask one of our most successful Paralympic athletes who we should be looking out for and in what disciplines.
So athletics, a lot of strength there. Swimming are coming through, a lot of young athletes. The one I do feel okay to mention is Dame Sarah Storey. So I've known her since Barcelona, when she was a child in Barcelona, but her drive to keep going, stay injury-free, I'm hoping she's going to add at least another couple of goals to her tally, because she absolutely deserves it for not just how she's on the track, but track cycling, but road, but what she does outside in terms of giving back. She's an incredible person.
Do you know what? We've come full circle, Jess, so we can finish off with you on this. I mean, Dame Sarah Storey, our most successful Paralympian ever, having won medals both in the pool and on the bike. And also in between times, Jess, people may not realise that Sarah is not just a para-athlete. She races all other cyclists, doesn't she, the rest of the time? Yeah,
sometimes races in the able-bodied events as well, which is, incredible. And it's really inspiring to see what she does. Yeah, you'd be foolish to bet against her bringing home even more medals to add to her tally of, I can't remember, it's 30 or something like that now. Really appreciate talking to you both. Thank you so much, Tanni and Jess. That is all for this episode. We'll be back next week.